Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am super interested in your story. I too have always kind of been weary about doctors and medication, and my mom hates it because my mom is a very much a hypochondriac type person, and I'm the type where you got to force me to go get a regular checkup. So those are two extremes, but I'm definitely more on your side of things where it's a little bit weary about what people are recommending me because I'm a big believer of you know your body best. And a lot of the times when doctors are prescribing you things, they're going on very little knowledge and very little symptoms that you're telling them. And a lot of the times, as we know, we could say 1 to 2 symptoms, but those 1 to 2 symptoms could be a vast different disorders. And at the end of the day, I mean, we can go on with conspiracy theories, but I'm not surprised by your story, is what I'll say. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, it was a lot of hard learned lessons. And I mean, everybody out there is welcome to learn their lessons as they see fit. You can learn from my story, or you can learn the hard way on your own as well, if you would prefer. I always remember reading a study many, many years ago about the different types of patients out there. And apparently, the patients who were ornery and non compliant had actually much higher survival rates.
I'm not surprised. My boyfriend recently said to me that he maybe read a study or whatever, but it basically said that disagreeable people actually succeed more in life. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, because you don't take no for an answer. You dig for the right answers, you question everything. And sometimes you might come across as many different adjectives that people would describe us, but ultimately we get to the right answer and what we feel we deserve.
Well,
So,
and I think people have good boundaries too. A
mhm,
lot of us with non-existent or very poor boundaries end up getting taken advantage of very egregiously.
I agree. I agree. Now,
So
when
people
I,
take back the power.
uh,
Research
seriously,
everything you put in your body, and don't you dare take a medication without researching it thoroughly first and knowing what the pitfalls are and what the side effects are and whether or not you want to take those risks. Because no one tells you, your doctor doesn't tell you, your pharmacist doesn't tell you, and they don't always have a slip in with the prescription that describes all the problems that may occur.
yeah. I think you can still take whatever prescription that you want or put anything in your body. I mean, we actively put crap in our bodies all the time, but
Yeah,
if you
the
know
joys
what you're
compare all
putting
the
in.
free will.
Yes. But just know, like, stop doing and taking and ingesting things blindly just because a trusted professional is giving you it. Still do your own research and question things if you feel like they need to be
Yeah.
questioned.
Yeah, question everything. If you're in a spot where you're not allowed to question things, I can tell you right now that is a very dangerous area. And the tools of manipulation, as soon as you start feeling fear, guilt, and shame, know that someone's trying to manipulate you. Ask, what is the agenda and who's benefiting?
Agreed. I know
Yeah.
even in my profession, when I'm working with clients, when I send them a ton of paperwork and they have no questions, I'm like, that's really odd to me.
Hmm,
I expect a bunch of questions back. Either they actually thoroughly understood something, but my first assumption is you didn't really read any of this. And what
probably
that
not.
tells me is I might have trouble later on. And I don't want to. I'd rather go through all the documents now and you understand exactly what you're signing before there's any concerns later. But
You go through
so
the
many
document
people,
at that point.
but it's so many people sign things blindly, so many people ingest things blindly and just go with what people are telling them. Why do you think so many people, and we'll get into your story in a second, but why do you think so many people are so afraid to question anything and question
Well,
professionals?
I'm sure there's many reasons, but I think the first one is probably laziness. They don't wanna
Fair.
read all that fine print. They don't wanna go through pages and pages of that. They're like, "Oh, I just forgot it. I'll just." And then when you're doing anything online or on the computer, you have to check that box where I agree
I'm
with the
like, what am I
terms and
agreeing with?
conditions. Yeah,
Do you go
but
and
you
read all
can't place
those?
the order until or get whatever it is or get any further until you check that box. But how many people actually read the pages and pages and pages of that electronic scroll down that comes through the screen? Not many people. And I know when I've gone
Rarely.
in a car mechanic to, for that agreement with the dealership or whatever it is, for repairs on my vehicle, I sit there and I read it, and the women behind the reception tell me, "Geez, you're one of the very few people who actually reads that thing."
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's important. A lot of people don't realize they're signing away their rights on so many of those contracts. And I think a lot of people would say, I wish I had read it later on when they end up in court, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your story. So, if you want to give the audience a little bit of like a highlighted version of what went down when all this started, you were 6 months pregnant. You were my age. You were 28, right?
Yeah, I was 28 years old.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be from my life, getting lots of things done in my life. They had prescribed, it was very difficult to find doctors in Calgary at the time. I was 6 months pregnant, or pardon me, 5 months pregnant before I found a doctor. Like I said, common infection. They gave me a drug called Vancomycin. And boy, the next day I was immediately lactose intolerant and I couldn't
Crazy.
suddenly, yeah, I suddenly couldn't handle dairy anymore. So obviously it had destroyed that section of my microbiome that helped me digest dairy. And what I found out too is the more and more I ate later on that week, the more and more I suddenly had sudden allergies too, like caffeine. All of a sudden, like I got to like half a cup of coffee and my heart did this. And I
Wow.
thought, oh my God, that's weird. I've never had coffee do that to me before. And then I also started getting leg cramp, which I'd never had Charlie horses or anything like that before.
Yeah.
And, I couldn't even stretch in the morning, my feet. I couldn't even do that because that would throw me into Charlie horse leg cramps. So obviously I was suddenly prone to hyperacidity. Yeah, everything just kind of got worse and worse from there as I started. Because what your body does is it starts digging into your enzyme storage to digest everything because you
Mhm.
no longer have all those wonderful beneficial bacteria in your gut that do 80% of your digestion for you, right? They also have many janitorial functions. They clean you up, they clean you out. They eat up that cancer tumor you were trying to grow. There's loads and loads of research out there you can take a look at. I can refer people to. There was a doctor in Toronto. They used an E. coli derivative to dissolve brain tumors. And this would happen
Wow.
in a matter, yeah, and this would happen in a matter of days.
Wow.
So the presence of these bacteria in our body are extremely important. Our bodies themselves are actually just specialized and organized bacteria.
The nature of what that doctor prescribed you, it seems like it was just kind of a normal antibiotic for the infection, but it just destroyed your body. Way too powerful.
I think it's a pretty harsh antibiotic, and I'm not sure why they prescribed it to me for the type of infection that I had because it was such a common infection. But I want people to think like antibiotics are. It's in the name. We're going to take a look at the semantics in addiction right now, right? Antibiotic. Against, anti means against. Biotics mean life or the living,
Mhm.
right?
It's
Against
it's
life or
in to
against
kill
living.
whatever's in your body.
Yeah. So whatever will kill the small little organisms will also kill you in a large enough dose, right? And I've worked with live blood cell analysts as well. And what's really interesting is that he told me that if people have had 10 or more courses of antibiotics, they're guaranteed an autoimmune disease.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah, absolutely guaranteed an autoimmune disease at that point. Antibiotics store in the body. About 85 to 90% of them stay in your cells and your tissues, quietly killing off any type of microbiome or anything beneficial that could live there. So therefore, you get a lot of the bad bacteria like Clostridium difficile and the MRSAs and all the really bad stuff because they're the only things that can handle that kind of a toxic environment, right? And they're not beneficial for you.
And I find autoimmune disorders seem very prevalent over the last 5 years, I would say, and
Oh, extremely. I think
seeing
it's been
women.
even longer than that. I would probably say the 1980s when genetically modified foods came into vogue at that point. Like here you introduce a foreign protein that we've never encountered in our billions of years of evolution and suddenly introduce it as a mass experiment into the North American diet.
Mhm.
And I remember childhood allergies just went crazy at that point. So the usage of genetically modified crops and childhood allergies, they share a very similar graph growth.
Yeah, happening around the same years.
Yeah, all happening in and around the same years. And the other problem with a lot of the crops that are genetically modified would be the fact that a lot of them are soaked in glyphosate. And that particular chemical it mimics estrogen for one. So it takes our men and feminizes them.
Mhm.
And the other aspect of it is that it's an endocrine disruptor. So it
Yeah.
just messes up all the hormonal messages that the body's trying to send. So the body can't communicate properly with itself. And the hormones just kind of go haywire.
Mhm. And in
Um,
layman's terms, so glyphosate, what foods are we finding that in?
I think one of the worst contaminated crops are probably our cereals and our grains. So now there's other problems with cereals and grains as well too. I would encourage people to buy organic.
Mhm.
But organic doesn't necessarily mean that you are getting organic grain. There is a great deal of glyphosate and contaminated genetically modified grain in the organic grains as well. So you really have to, check out suppliers and vet different people, see if there's third parties that have tested their product, because unfortunately you get problems like, oh, what was his name? There was a farmer, he committed suicide. Actually, he was convicted of selling inorganic grain as organic.
Okay.
And there were tens of millions of dollars involved. I think it was over $40 million was shysted from the American public selling these inorganic grains as organic. And I think he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and he committed suicide the day up or the day before he was supposed to go in to trial or pardon me, go into prison.
Very
So,
cowardly.
and he was a really marked one because he'd go down to Las Vegas, hookers, strippers, gambling, like he really had a good time with this money that he shysted off of other people.
Like we were talking about earlier, that's what we call new money.
Yeah, and money, I suppose. That was
Got a little excited about it.
the other thing I wanted to mention too is that antibiotics, once they make their way into the food system, like a lot of feedlot animals are constantly fed low dose antibiotics as well, because in those filthy, disgusting, cramped conditions, they would die. But the problem is they eat the antibiotics or we eat them secondhand in their bodies. I'll give you an example. One of the little girls I used to nanny, and this was a long time ago. This was in the early 1990s. She couldn't touch ground beef because she had a penicillin allergy. There was so much penicillin in the ground beef that there was no way she could handle it. She had terrible reactions.
Insanity.
So it's made its way into our food supply in a big way. So
Mm.
purchasing meat that's antibiotic and hormone free, extremely important. The other problem that's another huge issue is cleaning solvent contamination. Now, I run into this issue from organic suppliers where, and especially with COVID, man, they've gotten really nuts with throwing poison chemicals all over
Yeah.
everything. And they have to, they don't necessarily wipe surfaces off properly because I get very specific irritable bowel symptoms if I eat food that's contaminated with cleaning chemicals. So, yeah, it can make it into your organic food too. And this is why I keep pushing people to join food based communities, because the only way you know what's on it and in it is if you process it and raise it yourself.
And I think that's what a lot of people are so caught up in is we're overwhelmed by eat this, don't eat that, eat this, don't eat that, buy organic this. Oh, but it's actually not organic. So it's overwhelming for the average person, I would say. We want grass-fed beef and then we want organic fruits. And it's like there's a big price tag to that as well.
There is, and much of it is a lie. A lot of the
Yes.
industrial organic food is not really organic. About a dozen years ago, they changed the legislation so that big ag organic could take a chunk of the profits. So it doesn't mean that there's no pesticides or no fungicides or other chemical fertilizers. It just means that there's less of those things.
Mhm.
But you know what? Pesticides, they store in the body forever until you grow a tumor to get rid of them or enclose them. So, it's kind of worth a little extra money not to get cancer later on. I
Mhm.
mean, it's all about risk and risk assessment. And I can honestly say that organic does taste better.
Yeah,
Farmer's market is even better. And what you grow is the best. And like I said, five
absolutely.
times of what you could possibly buy.
Well, I find even over the years, like I've been on my own for the past 10 years. So just like buying my own groceries and whatnot. And I've noticed a different in taste. Like you buy strawberries now from the grocery, there's no taste to them.
No, the ones that come from California are just, yes,
I
they're
know.
awful.
And then you're paying a premium. You're paying like 5.99 Canadian, like for a little thing of strawberries. And you're like, these aren't even good.
Yeah.
I want to go back and ask you a little bit about going through all of those antibiotics and then also all the diagnoses they were trying to give you. So obviously, the first time that they prescribed the antibiotic, of course, you're going to take it. You're pregnant. You want to cure an infection.
I
It's
didn't think anything of
crazy.
it.
Exactly. At what point did you start questioning it, though?
I had never been quite that injured by medical procedures before, although I would say the last vaccine I had when I was 19, I remember them giving me that vaccine. Boy, I remember didn't even finish emptying that vial into my arm and I had to lie down. I turned green. My sisters were telling me how awful I looked. And I felt like I was going to throw up and pass out. And I was sick for a whole week after that
Bet.
tetanus vaccine. I'd fallen on a pair of
I was going
preen
to ask you, it
shoes.
was tetanus.
Yeah, it was tetanus. And I didn't need it. I really didn't need it. I had the shot when I was 15 and I was 19. So I was good for about another 6 years. I don't know why he gave it to me. Probably something he could bill to Alberta Blue Cross again, right? And something else to throw on the billing schedule. Anyway, I remember having an incredible intensification of my migraines after that. Like I wasn't having migraines just once a month, like regular. I was having migraines twice a month.
Shit. That's a big difference.
Uh-huh, yeah, that basically made me dysfunctional for about 4 days a month afterwards. So, but I don't remember ever having such terrible problems with antibiotics previously. My mother was a nurse, so she was dragging me to the doctor all the time. I've probably had bioaccumulation of over 40 different courses of antibiotics over my lifetime, just from the ages of 0 to 28. Because after that experience, I never took antibiotics again.
Mhm.
I
All
I
of the
figured
nurses
out
and
all these
doctors
raw
listening now are cringing.
Well, yeah, but figure out other ways, antibiotics should be a last resort at all costs.
I think there's definitely a place for Western medicine, but until it's gotten so far where you're like, because you can have a virus in your body and you're like, there's nothing holistically or what I can do quick enough to help. Like when people have really strong cancers, it's like, yeah, you need to put all these chemicals in to kill it all out. But I think there's a lot to do before it gets to that point. I don't think that should be the immediate band-aid.
Well, things have been going wrong for a long time. If you've got a really aggressive, or they open you up and you're full of cancer, your body, see, and
Completely
this is
agree.
the other thing, people don't understand pain. Pain is there to tell you you're doing something wrong. You don't just take a painkiller, shut it down, and keep doing the same things you've always done. That doesn't make any sense, right?
Kim, I feel like you know me. I'm an Advil popper, like real bad. And I
Oh
think
dear.
but it's also like I'm a heavy water drinker too, so it's like probably I need to reduce my screen time, I need to reduce stress, like just take a bath, but my god, I love to pop an Advil and keep going. It's not good. What's all this
Yeah.
Advil doing to my body, I wonder? You know probably.
Well, it's definitely very bad for the gut and the liver for
Yes.
sure, especially long term. I would advise alkalizing your body instead.
How do I do that?
I fresh green juices, celery juice is an excellent way to do it. A couple cups of that a day. Another one of my favorite juices is a whole bunch of organic parsley with 2 sour green apples, and then you
Yum.
blend it with a couple of raw eggs, and oh my god, the eggs make it sweet and delicious.
Really?
I remember the first time I made it, I was like, "Man, I could drink 3 or 4 liters of this stuff. It's so good." And it's a wonderful
Wow.
in liver tonic.
Okay.
And I can go 4 hours after doing something like that. So I find it gives me a real good boost.
Boost.
So instead of a coffee in the morning, which causes hyperacidity and overacidity and headaches and kidney stones and, irritability, et cetera, and blood sugar imbalances, why not do that kind of a green juice instead?
That's fair. I want to ask you, one of the things you told me was they were diagnosing you with Crohn's disease in your late 20s.
Yeah.
You gotta fill
Yeah.
in some blanks for me here. So you're taking the
Okay. So
antibiotics, then they're
yeah,
diagnosing you with Crohn's, like, where do we get here?
over time, like I said, I didn't have the good bacteria to clean me up or clean me out anymore. And I was prone to hyperacidity at that point without my microbiome. So I developed polyarthritis. I was crippled. My left knee swelled to the size of a honeydew melon. And I remember having to go to emergency and having to get that knee drained. Normally, when they drain a knee, they take off 40 to 50 cc's. They took 90 cc's off that knee. And even then, it was still quite swollen. So, I mean, just the chronic pain just kind of drove me crazy. And the doctors gave me a whole bunch of Percocet. And I don't like painkillers and I don't like a lot of the drugs because I like to stay sharp.
Right.
You
And you
know,
feel like
when
these drugs kind of dull you out a bit.
Yeah, I think I maybe took 1 or 2 of the 18 Percocets, or no, not Percocets. I think they gave me Oxycontin, another highly addictive one. I
Mhm.
think I only 2 of those, and I felt so rotten and hungover and dull from that medication that I was like, "I'm not taking these. I will figure it out. I will suffer the pain until I figure out how to get out of this mess." Because at least I was able to stay sharp and do my research and, try to be able to figure things out at that point. So I struggled. I really, really struggled with that. And then they gave me drugs called, and I still hadn't learned my lessons. They gave me drugs called Celebrex, Vioxx, stuff popular with the crippled 60 plus crowd. And then they gave me a drug called Arthrotec. Well, that was the end. That
What
was the last
timeline
straw.
is this? Are you still pregnant at this
And
time
this
or
is about a year after. My daughter's just,
did you have
yeah,
a healthy pregnancy?
my daughter is not, my daughter's just over a year old. So I was 29 at this time when they gave me the Arthrotec. That's when I stopped secreting all bile. At that point, that particular medication gave me such incredible liver and kidney damage that I'm still struggling with that to this day.
This is 21 years later, 20 years later.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with those issues to this day because of that medication and the damage it did to me. So, yeah, that's when the chronic diarrhea started.
Not
Like,
surprised. Some of
no,
there's some
I had
bowels.
the first week I lost 6 pounds, and then I lost 30 pounds over the next 3 months, and I couldn't keep weight on. My lowest weight was 80 pounds. So I really look like a walking skeleton.
Of course, like, you're thin in
And
general, like,
yeah, yeah, this is me at 120. So think of me as, 40 pounds lighter.
I'm sure you looked sick.
Oh, yeah. It was not fun. It was not pretty. I remember the doctor at the time who prescribed the medication. I told her, look, I've been having problems since taking that medication. She says, God, it's been a week. Your intestines should be fine. And I'm like, they're not. They're not. And the other thing I encountered too with physicians is if they caused your problem or if they say they can't find the reason for your problem, they tend to send you to psych.
Really?
They tell you you're a head case and you need to see someone from psych, and then they start calling you a hypochondriac. And there's all the other labels that they like to give you too. But it's like, hey, I'm starving here. I live amongst plenty and it doesn't matter what I eat. I don't digest it,
Why do
you
you
know.
think they're so quick to do that? They don't wanna say they were wrong, or they don't want to
They're
say
certainly not gonna
feeding
take
into the
responsibility
problem?
for the errors that they've made or the
Yeah.
problems they've caused. That's for certain.
Mhm.
It's yeah, they're not, doctors are extremely good at burying their mistakes. I think I spoke to you previously about how, when doctors say E. coli killed a human being, no, the E. coli didn't. The antibiotics they prescribed did because E. coli does not shut down the liver and the kidneys, but antibiotics do. If
Mm,
you read the inserts, if you find out the side effects, antibiotics definitely will shut down the liver and the kidney.
right.
So if the doctor says that the E. coli killed them, I think they're burying their mistake. They
Mm.
overprescribed the antibiotics, and the antibiotics probably did that poor person in.
Yikes, yikes, yikes. So,
Very yeah.
continue the story. So now you're getting diagnosed with Crohn's, where
Yeah. So at a point, they put me in for a colonoscopy, and they diagnosed me with Crohn's disease at that
you're
point.
29 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a small daughter, and the only way
That's
I
like a
can
death
describe
sentence.
it is because you know they basically told me I had to look forward to many surgeries, bowel resections, joint replacements. It's 21 years later, I haven't had a single surgery,
But I
you
think,
know?
and this is why we're talking about this together today, I think the majority of people would have sat there and accepted that as their life destiny.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
scares me. I know so many people in my life that would never they don't question anything in general, let alone something to do with their health and their life future. So
Yeah, until it's gone. And what?
people are afraid to say
And
no
then
and
what?
question things. But at that point, you were
Well,
like, wait, no.
you want to learn that as a skill. I think we should have
Yeah.
courses where people are just say, "No."
Right.
And, no. I know even with one of my younger sisters, I sat down with her and tried to teach her to say no.
Were you born like that though? I know I was.
I I don't know if I was always saying no, but I was definitely an observer.
Yes.
I was the quiet one who was always looking, watching, observing. The other thing I find is people, and it probably has to do with all the fluoride in the water. I find people with calcified pineal gland don't make connections anymore. Anyone who's living outside the city drinking well water, they're all talking conspiracy theorists. They're all putting connections together, whereas people in the city, not a chance.
They're a little sheepy.
You want to get through to people, try and convince them to improve their water.
Hmm.
Trying to find a water source without fluoride and see how their personality changes.
I know. I know. You're watching me drink water now, and I'm like, it's coming from the tap, and you probably are like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, there's lots of subtle negative energy in tap water, besides the chlorine, which destroys the microbiome, fluoride, and a lot of other things as well, too. There's a lot of leads and coppers and metals
How
that
do
may be
we
in there,
learn
too.
about our water? Like, how do we know if we're on like good water? Like, do I call the city? Like, do I just know based on the water that's coming into my tap? Like, I've always been a tap water girl. I've always been a believer. I was like, I don't like the idea of bottled water. I personally think that's worse than
Yeah,
plastic, especially with being a woman, and I
yeah,
avoid my
yeah.
plastic.
Avoiding plastic would be good, too. Right now, water's been definitely a contentious issue for me. One of the best bottled waters I've ever found was Apollinaris. I prefer my bottled waters to be pH neutral
Okay,
because I spent some time doing a water dowsing course for a weekend. And, it's surprising how many waters are actually acidic,
which is
you
weird.
know? Yeah, well,
I'm gonna drink
Dasani by
acidic water.
Coca-Cola.
I'd rather just drink coffee.
Yeah.
So how do I know if I have good water or I need to do something about it? Like, is it
Uh,
test I do on the
you could
water?
always send it away for individual testing at your local lab.
Okay.
I think online you can actually find local results for your water according to the municipality. So you can check out what levels of lead or
Mm.
whatever metals or other chemicals which may or may not be in your water as
What
well.
do I wanna see in my water? Like a neutral pH, is that what you said?
Yeah, I prefer waters with a neutral pH if possible. We already get a lot of acids in our system. So
Mm.
it's good to have some pH neutral water to like flush out a lot of those excess. A lot of us in Western society are suffering from overacidity, you know,
From what?
headaches, stroke. Pretty much any disease state has to have a hyperacidic body to either proliferate or to exist in. Cancers are a great example too. You
Yeah,
have to
it's
have an
all
acidic
yeah,
body
you have
pH
acidic body,
to
yeah.
grow.
And
Yeah. But
we
if you're in pain of any sort, you're overacidic.
grow acidic, and pain meaning some back pain, a headache, any kind of probably skin issue or, digestive issues, like, it's probably acidity problem.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely and a lot of people they're not aware of what acid forming or alkaline forming foods are. People tend to just
It's
eat
Science
acid forming
101.
foods like animal. A lot of people just tend to eat acid forming foods, which tend to be your animal foods,
Mhm.
your dairy, your meat, and your grains are actually acid forming as well too, especially your wheat. The food groups in Canada are actually not according to human health. They are according to what agricultural suppliers have to sell us. So
Mm,
they want us eating lots of grains because they have a lot of grain supply, right?
yeah.
So that's how the food pyramid has been divided for decades and decades and decades. It's
Decades
actually
of us
not
feeding our kids a glass of
human
milk.
health. Yeah, it's not for human health. It's according to industry availability and
Economic.
it's propaganda, essentially. Yeah, a lot of the education, we spoke about this before. We live in an era of alternative facts where truth is hated, exiled, and despised. Much of what we get as education is actually just programming and propaganda.
Obviously, of course. I say obviously, but I don't think it's obvious to everyone else. We trust a lot of people that we
No,
probably shouldn't.
oh, I would definitely agree with that. Keep your eyes open all the time.
I think what you said earlier, I asked you, "Why don't we question things?" And you said, "I think a lot is to do with laziness." Yeah, it definitely goes back to that. People would rather live a simple life and not question things around them. They don't wanna get involved. They'd rather keep the peace, but that peace is not gonna be
Well,
no longer if you don't speak up.
but they want to live the mythology. They've kind of it's really interesting how people have, they kind of want the government to take that parenting role. And if you ever mention that, the government's not really there to protect and help you, they're there to manage you, that makes them very angry. That makes people extremely angry that you have upset that mythology. You are attacking people's very basic belief systems and they're not going to be happy about that at all, even though you may be speaking truth.
Mhm.
And you've observed a lot of things that prove this.
People
You know,
like to
I,
turn a
I
blind eye to it too.
yeah, yeah, I think so. They like to live in denial as well too. It's just easier to live that way, right? A lot of us tend to take the path of least resistance,
Yes. Definitely.
and those pathways tend to take us to very bad places.
And we don't ever question anything or speak up or get pissed off about anything until it's a little bit too late.
That's true too. Yeah, no, we kind of need to, as a group, as a big group, like get angrier and spark a lot of change a lot sooner. I mean, I love places like France where the people, the government is terrified of the people, and
Mhm.
that's the way it should be. When the people talk, the government there listens. But here it's the opposite. The people are afraid
Canada's
of the government.
awful.
Yeah. And this is a problem. They can basically herd us around and do whatever they want to us.
Did you grow up in Alberta as well?
I did grow up in Alberta. I'm born and raised here.
Me and my boyfriend talk about this a lot, just how Canada will never do it. We're so sheepish. We really are. We don't do anything about anything, but I would say out of all of Canada, I think Alberta gets pissed off the most. When something's getting taken away from you or you guys don't like something, you guys speak up. I
No,
don't
no,
say that from
I
any
was with the Quebecers.
Yeah, or Quebecers. I mean,
I was
they
the
don't wanna be
Quebecers
with us
people in
anymore.
that
That's
area.
fair. You're right.
And we know the French, like, I was in France for 3 weeks and I worked with, a bunch of people from Paris. And the French are they're a culture of malcontents. No, they're just looking for a reason for a fight and they're just looking for a reason to be unhappy.
Which is a good way to be sometimes.
You'll get a lot more of what you want in
You
that.
won't be living in denial.
No, you won't be living in denial. That's for sure. No one's going to steamroll over you.
Well, then that makes me ask you, within your story, when did you start saying enough is enough?
Well, like I said, after the Arthrotech, it's like, my God, these guys are trying to kill me. I got to figure things out on my own because this is the only way I'm going to survive this. Because they
Do you
don't.
think having a little girl you had a daughter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a
Having a
small
little
little daughter.
girl, like, made you a little bit hyper aware where it's like, "I need to really watch out for my health and take matters into my own hands."
Yeah, that was part of it there too.
Mm.
You want to be there for your kids as well and
You have a
do what's right.
dependent now.
Yeah, you want to do what's right by them, right?
Mhm.
Things change after you have children. You can't be selfish in any way, shape, or form.
You're never allowed to be selfish again.
Yeah. If you're a selfish person, please don't have children.
No,
They don't deserve that.
you're gonna be quite the opposite.
Yeah, and you won't enjoy your life with children anyway. So
You'll
don't do
resent
it.
them.
Yeah. If you're not a loving, giving person with incredible amounts of
Don't have them.
patience, please don't have children.
I agree with you.
Yeah. They
Your kids are
demand
cute,
to be
but they're still gonna
present.
piss you off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't remember how many times I told my daughter, it's a good thing you're cute because
Yep.
I kill after what you just did.
Seriously. The cuteness always helps.
Uh-huh.
It's like a puppy. Like, if a puppy is so cute and it pees on your floor, you're like, "It's okay."
I know. Well, those maternal instincts they're quite strong and quite incredible programming. It's quite surprising, and I'm really bad. I know if it's small and little and needs me, I mother it. I'm really bad for that. That nurturing
Well, you
instinct.
showed me your garden right before this call. Yeah, you're mothering that garden. You got a full forest out there of plants and
Yeah.
food and everything. It's beautiful, very luscious.
Yeah. Yeah. My nurture instinct is definitely very, very strong.
So, today's conversation is not gonna stop the hordes of people from taking antibiotics. People are still gonna
No.
take what they're prescribed and listen blindly. But what can we be doing today as individuals that's practical and achievable to really change our microbiome and fix it? So first I want to ask you, like, if you want to explain to the audience, what is a microbiome?
So the microbiome is about a collection of 2 to 5 pounds of bacterial material that's in your guts. It has over 24 times the amount of genetic material compared to the human genome. So it is incredibly diverse. There are lots and lots of different microbes in there. And like I said previously, they're there to help you digest your food. They create all sorts of different vitamins and enzymes that you need, like the B complex vitamins, vitamin K. They create all sorts of enzymes as well too. They help the liver deal with detoxification, the dual detox pathways. They create all the enzymes for all those interactions. Like I said, they clean us up, clean us out. They eat up that tumor we were trying to grow. They keep us from being prone to hyperacidity. They have so many wonderful and different jobs that are very specialized in our bodies, and we cannot live without them. They are our connection with our environment. They are our ability to be able to digest and obtain energy from our food. And without that microbiome, without those diverse families of bacteria, we are in nothing but trouble. This is another thing I see with the way our deaf culture, our society is set up. They try and separate us from so many different things. They separate us from our intuition and ourselves. We can't believe our feelings and our intuition. They tell you, well, what do you see that exhibits that? And you know how you don't trust people?
Mm-hmm.
I explain why, but you give them a chance anyway, and it always goes badly.
Story of my
Yeah.
life. My intuition,
Yeah.
the strongest skill I have.
Yeah. And that intuition is there to protect us and guide us the whole way. And we should do nothing but listen to that. That is very, very important. We need to reconnect with ourselves and our intuition on many different levels. Right. And we need to connect with nature. We need to connect with all the bacteria out there, like all this hand sanitizing and
Yeah,
all
I
these
hate it.
germicidal chemical. I mean, this is all causing microbiome damage.
Agreed.
We're going to see that all out with autoimmune diseases and cancers, not immediately necessarily, but 4, 5, 10 years down the line, we're going to see it.
We're already seeing it.
Yeah. And then the social distancing and, yeah, they set up all sorts of things to just depress our immune systems and our ability to cope with, stay home instead of going outside. And, socialization is actually really quite immune
Healer.
stimulating.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that connection with other people. And then, the social distancing actually takes us out of the expansion of the heart chakra. So we're not sitting in each other's heart chakra auras. So energetically, there's so many things happening on so many different levels. But we really do have to reconnect with nature. I see the Industrial Revolution as basically traumatizing the entire human race. They tore us off the land and they threw us into cities as cheap pools of labor. And the cities can be liquidated very quickly through the water supply. So that's another thing to consider, another reason not to necessarily drink the water. But people are not necessarily happy in cities. This is not a great environment for a lot of people. There's not a lot of nature around to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And, I spoke earlier about the concrete sapping energy. So I always remember when I worked downtown at the optical, how people were just so cranky and miserable downtown compared to some of the outside stores in the smaller towns or on the edges of the city where I'd worked.
Different
People were
energy
just,
level.
yeah, they were just so much more miserable and so much more stress. You have to be
When we
so
were
much more
talking
careful with the
earlier, I
downtown
was
centers.
super affected by my environment. I remember working in a certain office where there was no windows, like in the where I was
Oh,
sitting.
awful.
And
Yeah.
I am glad that job was over 6 months in because I went in every single morning miserable. And I was like, I need to like just work from home or something. I'm like, there's no windows here. It's just well to be in a basement. Like I'd rather
Yeah.
be in a basement in my pajamas. I don't want to be sitting in a business attire with no windows. Like, what? This is the worst of both worlds.
Oh, yeah. No one likes living in a basement.
No.
We are definitely above ground creatures and not ground dwellers. That's for sure.
No. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was so brutal. And even, yeah, like I'm very affected by light. I'm very affected by like certain noise level. Like I live on a pretty busy street and just the nature of living in a city, you're hearing sirens, you're hearing people yell outside your window every day. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like this
Yeah.
is like not for me. The nice thing about
Yeah.
Toronto that there are tons of places in the city that are a little bit more nature-esque or a little bit quieter, that kind of thing. And you don't realize that you're affected by those things until you're in them.
Well, and the cities tend to be places that are overstimulating, and it's hard to
Mhm.
get that REM sleep in the cities. That and you have lots of EMF pollution. And a lot of people don't understand how EMF affects the body as well too. It interferes with cellular function. And living in the house here, I actually turn off my Wi-Fi every night. And I do
Really?
feel a difference. And the other thing I did is I have a meter that gauges all the EMF in the house too. I had to turn off my TV and the box as well too, because those
What's EMF? Emulsified.
are yeah, electromagnetic field.
Right.
So it's that electrical energy that emanates off of our devices. And I found the days that I did turn off the Wi-Fi at night, I felt so much better the next morning. Like
Really?
yeah, I felt more energetic and just happier because
Mm.
my poor cells weren't constantly dealing with
Well,
that
well,
energy.
you'll hate this, Kim. Our Wi-Fi box, it's like by my bed. That's where the plug-in
Oh
is.
my gosh, that's so not good for you.
Well, what are my other options, you know?
Oh, no, that's tough.
It's
You can go
awful.
online. SLT.co is it's a safe living technologies. They've got a number of devices you can use to protect yourself from some of the EMF. One of the things I did was I have a little piece of shungite that I taped to the back of my phone because I get actual electrical shocks from my phone at my arm, and
Wow.
it was really bothering me. So I got the shungite, and a while back I was like, "Oh, how come I'm getting these electrical shocks in my arm again?" And sure enough, the shungite had fallen off. So it
Interesting. Your body is
yeah,
really affected by these things.
yeah, I'm quite well, but I'm on the EMF sensitivity and multiple chemical sensitivity group on Facebook, and there are many, many people who are much more sensitive than I am,
Mm. Eh,
but I
I've never
definitely
heard
have
of
a
that
lot of
before. Like, how
sensitivity.
do you know that you're sensitive to it? You just
You can feel it. Some people will actually feel shocks.
Mhm.
Some people, they get sudden digestive issues. It varies from person to person too. Some people just get headaches instantaneously. If you pop on those groups or request to be a member, you can take a look around. There's quite a variety of
To learn a
symptoms that
lot.
people do get, or, some people get psychiatric symptoms. A lot of people can't sleep around heavy EMF areas. Like I figured it out. Those towers they have, the 40
Mhm.
meter zone is the nosebleed zone. That's the really dangerous zone.
I know. I want to ask you a few more questions before we stop. Mostly around like food-based communities and food supplies and growing your own food. When did
Yeah.
you start or at first with all your garden out in the back, what food are you growing for yourself and
Oh,
what
I've got
what kind of eating
it's
style do you have?
it's a juice garden predominantly for me. So I've got celery, parsley, zucchini, and carrots. And then I also have my partner likes peas and lots of salad. My partner's could eat Caesar salad like 5 times a week.
Wow.
So lots of lettuce out there. And then I've got all sorts of herbs, chive, sage, thyme. What else do I have? I think I have some tarragon as well. And then I do keep some basil in the house. It's such a tender. There's raspberries out there and some strawberries hidden underneath the ferns.
Wow.
And I do plan on planting some more raspberries out the side of the house.
How long have you been
And
doing that?
you know what? I have been gardening since I was 10.
Love it.
I had my hands in the soil since I was 10 years old. My parents divorced when I was 10. So I got promoted to doing all the yard and landscaping and all the
Perfect.
mowing. Yeah, at that age. So it was just kind of something I kind of grew into and really loved and enjoyed. And, that continues. And I know that living in places where I couldn't have a garden, no, they didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy them. I would have beautiful windowsill garden. Like I lived in Prague for a year and I had this gorgeous windowsill garden, but it's not the same as a garden where you can go out and sit and pull your food from. And
What do you do in the wintertime?
well, I have lots of house plants in the winter, and winter is
Yeah,
hard for me to get through.
I bet.
Yeah.
Winters can be bad in Alberta.
Oh yeah, they're bad. They're long and they're cold. I'm usually not feeling all that great by the time March rolls around.
None of us are in
Um,
Canada.
no, none of us taking that vacation someplace hot and warm and beautiful
Very
in
necessary.
December, January, February, March is a health and game changer for so many people. It's too bad COVID came around. I was actually in Florida when COVID started happening here.
Right.
And I think I made it over the border just a day before the borders closed and all the flights stopped. But with all these restrictions and, the testing and the, wanting people to take a vaccine, it's like, I won't be taking that. I won't be traveling, period.
Yeah, you'll wait.
Yeah. I go to the tanning salons, get my 10 minutes of vitamin D every 10 days. That kind of gets me through the winter.
Mm,
Still not a trip that that trip to Florida really did help.
I bet. Yeah, so many people in Canada are like that. The winters can be really rough.
Depression gets really predominant after January for a lot of
Yeah.
people here.
I want to ask you, for people who don't have the option to be growing their own gardens and just the nature of where they live, what could they be doing with their food sources that could create a little bit more of a healthier microbiome?
Well, I think going to farmers markets is probably your next best bet. And ask lots of questions: what they put on the food, what the animals are fed. You want to make sure your animals aren't fed GMO greens, or you want grass fed or fed organic if possible. No antibiotics, no hormones, preferably unvaccinated too. I raised chickens, 50 chickens one year, and my farmer raised chickens as well too. And I didn't vaccinate mine and I didn't lose any of them, but she vaccinated hers and she lost 3% of them right off the bat.
Interesting.
It's so interesting. A lot of people see vaccines as something that is so wonderful and life saving, but that certainly has not been my experience.
And I think the nature of everything you've been through, you don't want to take any risk anymore. You've been through so much.
Yeah, well, and I've had to live, like I said before, countercultural in order to survive. Like the thing that helped me the most was probably Primal diet.
Hmm.
And that
Which
is
is
the
a
cornerstone
lot
of
of
raw
women would
meat.
say, do not do that.
Yeah. And the cornerstones of this diet is raw meat, raw cream, raw green juices, and raw honey. And, a lot of people, if I'm teaching, I come to a staff room and I'm eating raw chicken. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're going to die of something.
But hey, it works for you. And how long you've been doing that?
17 years I've been doing Primal.
So you're eating raw meat.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't
I'm
cook
eating
it.
raw meat on a daily basis. Yeah, cooked food makes me sick for a full week. Ever since taking that medication, yeah, I eat a cooked meal and I'm sick for an entire week. So I don't particularly care to be in pain, and I
Right.
really don't enjoy being sick. So
I
I
mean,
stick to the
everyone
raw
knows their
food.
body. Like if there's one thing that someone can take away today, it's like listen to the cues of your body. If like people assume oatmeal is healthy, I mean it is in some way, but it's like if your body does not react well to oatmeal, like don't eat it. If your body reacts to something that's countercultural, like a primal diet, then stick to it,
Yeah.
you know?
Listen to your feeling and instincts, your intuition. It's very important to reconnect with that.
Mm,
So if anything, question everything and reconnect, make reconnections everywhere, especially with your intuition.
I know, I know. Kim, before we close it out, I just want to ask you, is there any final last words for anyone they can take away from your story, kind of what you preach? Anything?
Well, I did have that little bit of writing that I wanted to share with you.
Please,
So
before we
I'm just
close
going
it
to
out.
pull that over. Yeah, we are environments. We are part of the environment. The microbiome is our connection to nature and governs our interactions with the outside world in terms of our digestion and psychology. Once the microbiome is destroyed, we are no longer one with nature, and the resulting disconnection can only be described as hell. Once the microbiome has been destroyed, we no longer have the chemical factory to produce all the enzymes and chemicals that we need to digest, heal, repair, and maintain our bodies. Illnesses such as inflammatory and autoimmune diseases, sicknesses of the mind like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia are the rewards to be reaped from microbiome destruction.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if we're killing off all the little guys with antibiotics, we're also damaging ourselves. We are one with them. So we have to strike a balance and a harmony with that.
Agreed.
Mhm.
And last but not least, give us one main tip we can all take away and change today after we listen to this episode.
Go visit your farmers markets, ask lots of questions, research some of the best waters that are available to you, or check out your city water. Like I said, the municipalities will post what's in your water and what it has tested recently. Or you can actually, if you have the money, you can pay and take it to a local lab. You can do the research yourself.
Or maybe if you have friends that work at labs, maybe they can do you a favor.
Yeah, they can definitely do with whatever. Yeah, hey, connections are everything.
Yes, in this world. And last but not least, if people are curious to connect with you further, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on a couple different places. I have a Facebook page called Navigating a Toxic World. I also have a discussion group with that same title on Facebook. I'm also a moderator or an admin on two of the Primal Diet groups on Facebook as well, too. The Primal Diet Raw Food and Primal Diet by Augenus Vonderplanets. So people can always find me there if they have questions or would want to talk or connect somehow.
Kim, thank you so much for your time today. We got to talk again because I feel like there's definitely 5 more topics that I want to talk about with you because I think I can
No, it's
learn a
not
lot from you.
there.
We have a similar vibe in questioning the world around us. And like we said, not many other
Mhm.
people have that personality. So it's always nice finding other people like that as well.
Yeah, we do need to ask as many questions as possible right now at this time.
Kim, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.